You just know you better show up and you
Yeah.
better do well because there is no plan B.
Jada Sezer.
I was the first plus size model on ASOS, global ambassador for Adidas. One of my career highlights, running a marathon in my underwear. The fashion industry didn't want you to see what went on behind the scenes. I decided to leave everyone. A few months into starting my own business, I fell pregnant and then it all changed. If you stop, you're weak. If you stop, you're not a good mum. How are you doing it all? It takes a village to raise children. Does that make you less maternal?
I like this question. Hello, Jada. It is so amazing to have you on. You were one of the UK's first plus size models on ASOS specifically, and you have modeled for the likes of Topshop and many, many different brands. What's your journey been like?
Oh, where do we begin? Okay, a little whistle-stop tour of a decade-long career in the modeling industry. So I got into modeling at the very start of the rise of the body positivity movement. This was when there was a handful of plus-size models in the States. There was the only plus-size brand that was out there was Evans. If you're old enough, you'll know what Evans used to be.
Yeah.
And I was coming to the end of my master's in child psychotherapy, planning to go and do a doctorate in that, and started to use Instagram. This was when Instagram had just launched, and would create content that was very much editorial-like, but with a body that was mine. So it was like I was trying to replicate these Vogue editorials and would convince these photographers that beauty could look all different, not just like the models that we've seen in magazines. And that was really inspired because I was working with a lot of young people with eating disorders and body dysphoria, and had this idea that you had to be skinny to be beautiful, which was completely deluded. And I grew up with this sense of knowing I was bigger, taller. I'd always been a size 16, always 5'9", always big boobs, developed really fast at a young age. So I was very much aware that I didn't look like a lot of the people in my class. And what I knew was beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And it's so individual. And I grew up with a lot of confidence because that was
Yeah.
instilled in me when I was young. And I was enrolled into a lot of hobbies, and I played the violin for 5 years. I swam for 4 years. So I got a lot of my validation from doing things outside of the way I looked. And so I wanted to kind of give that back to a lot of the young girls I was looking at. And for some reason, it just manifested in the form of using Instagram. So within 6 months of posting on Instagram and sharing a lot of insights into how you could become confident, my images went viral. I was then approached by the producer of the first ever plus size show during London Fashion Week, and headed up that show as the face of it, became the runway lead. And then I was approached by 2 of the top modeling agencies in the UK. I finished my master's, didn't go on and do a doctorate, and then I went and spent the first year building up my portfolio. By year 2, I was living in New York. By year 3, I was working all around Europe internationally. By year 4, I moved to Australia. And so that was the kind of start of my career as a model. I was the first plus size model on ASOS. I became a global ambassador for Adidas. And one of my career highlights was running a marathon in my underwear. And all of
Okay.
that was to really show that women can be beautiful no matter their size, can be fit no matter their size, and just really redefine what people thought.
You seem to have had a lot of confidence because you did a lot where a lot of people would be like, no, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. I'm not sure if I can do this, even if they weren't plus size, even if they had the perfect look. Where did that confidence come from?
Good question, because I'd also say that there were many days where I didn't feel confident. And I think helping others and being a spokesperson in the space was reciprocated in some sense, because that gave me more confidence, because I was having to talk the talk and then walk the walk. So I think there's a level of fake it till you are it. And then I also think because I really valued things outside of my appearance. And that's not to say that there isn't a thing like pretty privilege. I'm sure people that might be listening or particularly watching this might go, oh yeah, but you look quite, normal in some ways. And there is an aspect of, okay, well, I wasn't that far out of what pretty was, or there's certain type of pretty that is like the Ashley Graham, the hourglass figure. And that is true. But what I would say that there is also people that look like your typical beauty standards and still are battling with the internal narrative that they are ugly. And that is something that I call self-esteem. And that's what I really, really work on every day, even to the days when I look my greatest, And I think there's a few different things that I would do. I think being very self-aware and being a curious person innately is one of them. reflecting, journaling, speaking to other people, and, getting those demons out of your head, reframing things. And then I think, again, I'll go back to what I was saying, but finding validation outside of your appearance. I love working on things. I love building things. I would set myself financial goals, business goals, personal goals, and that would give me that validation. And then having just great people around me and really solid friendships and relationships.
And it seems like you were like that from when you were younger, because you were doing your doctorate, you knew where you were going. And it seems that, your image going out there really actually transformed the direction you ended up going to, and you felt comfortable moving in another direction.
Did I feel comfortable? I don't know.
Okay. So you did it even though it wasn't part of your original plan.
Yeah, I think like with anything, starting at the very beginning when you're a complete amateur is really uncomfortable. In my 20s, when I started that career, because I feel like a decade on, I'm in a different career phase now. In my 20s, there was a level of naivety that became very much a part of your armory. It's like naivety was what got you through. A decade on, starting from the start, is harder and there's a lot more ego attached. You also have a reputation, you've got contacts in a certain space. But to go back to your original question, was it easy to start again and leave the career that I was on? No, but only because I had my dad over me being like, Jada, he's a Turkish man.
Oh, yeah.
What is this? You are leaving doctorate to do what? Modeling?
Yeah.
And I remember the day he said to me, so you work for these Evans people? I was like, how do you know what a plus size brand called Evans is? In his head, and I think my dad was very much a part of who I am, is if you're going to do it well. So if you're going to leave everything and you're going to be a model, you better be. And he never overtly said this, but it's the subtleties.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if it's like having like a foreign parent, a Turkish parent for sure, but
same as an African parent. Sound the same. Yeah.
You just know you better show up
and
you better do well because there is no plan B. You can't slack. You don't go half-hearted. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I better just commit fully. And, it wasn't just about modeling for me. It was about building community. It was about helping young women, helping people to feel better about themselves. And to be honest, I felt that the media was just outdated and stupid and narrow-minded, and you go to different countries and beauty is different.
Yeah.
So who's to say that the Western world's beauty ideals are what's right?
Exactly. And that's what social media is so powerful for, though, changing perspective of what could be considered beautiful. Some may argue now that things have gone to a more extreme at some point in time. Have you seen the world of plus size and what's beauty change in a positive way? And has there been any kind of knockbacks as well?
Yeah, so I think the sad thing that I've realized in this last decade, as the beauty industry shifted to really embracing curves, really embracing individuality, being very inclusive, it feels like swinging to the other end and going backwards slightly, because there's less plus size on the catwalks, less designers are creating plus size collections, mainstream high street brands are closing down their plus size lines, and a lot of plus size consumers are asking why. I think that's because bodies have been seen as a trend. Bodies are not a trend. In my eyes, as a feminist, I think it's a distraction. I think it's something to focus on that stops women from focusing on their success, their personal success, their financial success, all the other things that we could be doing to thrive and be the best versions of ourselves. And unfortunately, it feels like it's moving back in that direction. When I first started, we was coming out of the era of heroin chic, out of the Kate Moss, out of skinny is desirable. And just, I got into it at just a time it just so happened that it aligned at the right time where the plus size movement was on the rise. And yeah, I'd say that the pendulum will keep swinging, but what you can do now today to sort of continue the conversation is what's good.
Fair enough. I did feel like there was a season where certain things were performative as well from brands and companies, that they would do things just to look like they were doing it versus them genuinely really caring about certain communities or certain groups. And I'm hoping that changes. I'm not sure, but we know what our industries can be like. So I'm going to try and keep it on a positive note.
Well, you use your money, or our money is our power.
Mm,
Support with your currency, and I was just advising a brand the other day why they should support designers in plus size capsule collections. And I was saying, because if you have used plus size models before and catered to that audience and that customer base, not only does it look performative if you don't do it anymore or tokenistic, but it also shows that you have no brand integrity.
hmm.
And we're living in a time of conscious consumers. People are realizing when you don't do it, when you don't show up, and when you have done before, and it looks bad.
Yeah.
And brand is really the thing that will set you apart from, the look at Nike. Out of all the other trainer brands, why Nike?
Hmm.
Their brand.
Yeah.
That's what's got them there. So I think that's what you've got to protect.
Talking about wealth, we like to explore wealth. We like to explore money. And I know that you are now an amazing business owner and investor, but we also like to look at wealth from a holistic perspective. So, one of the first questions I have to ask you is, what does wealth look like to you today?
Wealth today, now that I'm a mum, now that I am in my 30s, looks more holistic than it did previously. And more specifically, I look at wealth from obviously a financial space, but also from a physical and mental and the harmony of my family space, whatever that
Mm,
looks like, whether that is making sure if you want financial wealth, in my opinion, it's making sure that you have a healthy relationship with your finances, but also that you're accumulating and it's growing, right?
mhm,
So if you want good mental wealth, I feel like that is making sure that your mind is clear, it's calm, it's focused, it's able to achieve what you want when you want it, and you've got clarity. Now, I think for me, it's trying to make sure I have wealth across all aspects. And even if I didn't actively get that, I definitely now have more balance in my life, which has allowed me to have wealth in more aspects because of the kids.
mhm,
Because I've had to slow down since I've become a mum. I've had to have more routine since I've
mhm,
become a mum. And weirdly enough, kids just teach you how to reparent yourself in some ways, because
mhm.
I'm having to now cook them healthy foods. I know what health is. I know that you shouldn't eat the whole chocolate bar, but I do. Will I
Mhm.
let my kids do that?
No
Hell no.
chance. Yeah.
And so there's a lot that I'm like, you've just called me out without even knowing it. Like,
Yeah.
I've given you breakfast, made sure you've had to eat it all up and those fruits. Me, on the other hand, I've walked out the house, haven't eaten until 2 p.m.
Mhm, mhm,
So yeah, I find that parenting's really helped me to have
mhm.
wealth.
So obviously with CEO mum, you're not afraid to talk about money and building wealth as well. So what was your journey like as a model doing that and as a plus size model?
I think at the very start of my career, I made no money. I was doing 10 different jobs. I remember specifically going to cat sitting, dog sitting, babysitting, anything where I wasn't I'm a bit of, I'm here talking to you, but I am actually more of an introvert. And so I didn't want to do the call centers like my friends did, but anything that involved caring, I would love to do.
Oh.
And that would be the thing I would do on the side whilst I got that one modeling job in 3 months. But the modeling job was thousands of pounds. So I was like, I'm going to hold out because I believe that this will work. And, they did get to a point where I was working a lot more than once every 3 months, but it took a long time. But because I knew that I had that one job every 3 months at the very start, I was really careful about how I spent my money.
Right.
And I would save, when you're a freelancer, you get paid here, there, and everywhere, and sometimes 3 months, 4 months, 6 months after the job. So you don't have a regular monthly income. You have to give yourself an income. So I
Mhm.
made sure I had my overheads covered, but I was living really lean and had savings just in case, because you never know when your next job's coming in.
Yeah.
And then as things progressed and I had extra money that wasn't just like living check to check, it was a check to check. Who lives check to check?
Mhm.
Living
Paycheck to
paycheck
paycheck.
to
Yeah,
paycheck.
yeah.
I invested in my first property because I didn't really grow up with a lot of financial education at home or financial literacy at home. I
Mhm.
kind of just figured it out as I went. And I knew that you have like investing in property is like a thing you should do.
Yeah.
And so I was like, right, I'm determined to have an apartment. I'm going to buy my own place, and got myself on the property ladder with my first big sum that I saved. I didn't really care for fashion, even though I was a model. And at that point, I wasn't really focusing on content creation because that also is a big part of my income now because I managed to build up this amazing community. And then brands started to knock on my door and say, you advocate, you have all these values that we want to align with. And that became a big part of my financial income. But at the start, it was mostly modeling. And I did it because of the meaning behind it, not because I
Yeah.
love fashion. So I didn't have to spend my money on clothes, which was great.
Right.
I do remember my first big modeling paycheck that said, this is going to contradict it, but I went to Bicester Village and I bought a Celine handbag. And that was my
Oh.
first big thing to be like, you did this.
Was that a percentage of your paycheck or the whole paycheck?
I think this was, no, knowing me, I'm a big advocate for saving because I think as a woman, specifically as a woman, you should always have your financial back.
Mm.
And I think I would have had savings.
Okay,
Definitely would have had
fine.
savings.
Yeah.
But I do remember my big first big purchase was this discounted Bicester Village Celine handbag. And I was so proud and would wear it every single day and loved it. And I still have it actually in a dust bag at home that should see the light of day. But I would say that this investment is going to be handed down. That's why I would invest in things that I knew would stand the test of time. And I'm still like that now.
The reality of the modeling industry is I feel like there's this carrot of the glitz and the glam and like lots of money. And sometimes people might think that about being a social media influencer, that, it's glamorous and there's loads to support you, but really that isn't the case. You are self-employed. You don't know when your next paycheck's going to come. And actually it could be quite difficult. So for you to be able to have saved to buy your first house, you must have been doing very well.
Yeah, it took me a few years to really build up my name because at the start, one, the industry wasn't what it was 10 years on. There was only a handful of clients. Two, there was, the pool of models then was small, but no one really knew who anyone was. So that's why I moved to New York. And that's when there was like much better rates, much bigger brands, and the income did go up. But the outgoings to live in New York City was also extortionate.
Ooh.
So, I was sleeping on an air mattress of one of my friend's apartment and would have to blow it up every day because there was a hole in it and it would deflate by the morning.
Wow.
So that was the hustle. I wanted it that much that I left London with like £2,000 in my bank account and went to New York and was like, I'm going to make this happen naively. Would I do that now? Hell no.
No.
Whether I had kids or not, no. But,
no chance.
In your 20s, you do it. And it was an adventure. That's how I saw it. And, there was pressures that came with that. I remember my agent in New York telling me, you show up, you have a designer handbag, you wear a nice coat, you have your hair and makeup slick, and you show up looking the part. And then meanwhile, I'm going back to my air mattress on the floor. Like, what
that is insane.
Is that about? But it was very smoke and mirrors. And that's why I love social media, because my audience got to see the real behind the scenes. And I remember the first time I was working for an e-commerce brand and I would take some selfies and I would hashtag it like day in the life as a model. And I remember the hairstylist like kind of like laughing and being like, oh, that's so cringe to do stuff like that then. Now it's just the norm. And if anything, people and brands are encouraging you to do that. But back then they didn't. The fashion industry didn't want you to see what went on behind the scenes. There was this allure that we had to be, stiff upper lip and perfect and mysterious. And it wasn't how I approached it.
Gosh, it's so fake that, you're struggling behind the scenes, but had to show up and show out and make everyone think that you've got everything together, even if you didn't.
Yeah, I guess that was what they expected. But that's also what I think drew my community to me, because I was like, I don't care for this. In fact, let's change it. Let's campaign with the British Fashion Council that more plus size models should be on the catwalk. Let's join forces with this is what I did. I connected with the Women's Equality Party and ran a campaign called #OneSizeFitsAll. And that's sort of what led me into running the marathon, when we decided, me and a journalist called Bryony Gordon decided that, we're fed up of what's going on in the world with fitness. When women are told that they should be looking like Kim Kardashian, men are told that they should have these ripping six packs.
Yeah.
And fitness doesn't look like that. And not everyone's body type can even become like that.
Yeah.
So, why don't we run a marathon? Bryony had run the marathon the year before. And that really inspired me to get into running and the running community. So I started training. And it was halfway into our training that we was in Ibiza, really, really hot. stripped off our tops, had our sports bras on, and was like, you know what? What if we actually ran the marathon in our underwear?
Wow.
Let's show this cellulite. Let's jiggle around. Let's, as hopefully have everything tucked in, not moving.
Not a nip slip.
No.
Yeah.
Problem with chafing, yeah. But why can't people that are curvy, that are a size 16, that have fat on their bodies, run a marathon?
And you ran the whole marathon?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're better than me. I couldn't do it.
You could do
amazing.
it. You totally could do it.
Really? Oh,
we
gosh.
plodded a marathon.
Okay, but
Yeah.
you made it to the end, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little more about how Klarna works. You've probably seen it while shopping online, but did you know it's not just about splitting payments? Klarna offers you a choice of payment options, including Pay Now, which lets you pay up front in full, or pay in 3, which helps you to spread the cost interest-free. And you can also choose to pay in 30 days, which can be helpful if you need to see the item before you make a decision, but you might not want to be out of pocket. What I love most about using Klarna is that they've got your back. For example, you can pause your payment if something goes wrong with your order, or extend your due date if you need more time. And of course, you can pay your balance in full at any time to help you stay on top of things. It's about giving you the freedom to shop smarter and not harder. If you want to know more about how Klarna works, head to klarna.com for more details. Just to know, borrowing irresponsibly may negatively impact your financial status. Pay in free and pay later are unregulated. Terms and conditions and late fees do apply. And borrowing irresponsibly may negatively impact your financial status and ability to obtain credit. So be smart. How have you seen things change in the industry? And again, you kind of were a model. You still have that label, but you've also moved into other things, which I'd love to explore. But what have you seen change?
Specifically, change in the modeling industry, we have seen the rise and the decline of diversity, inclusivity, whether that's, for the good, for the bad, it just is.
Mm-hmm.
What I've seen is the power of media and how they really dictate so much. But with that, the power of social media and individual voices and how loud they can be. And if you have an authentic voice and constant content, then you can also really build an army and tribe around you that think the same that you do, whether that is to do with like your body type or to do with, whatever it is, whatever your niche is. There's people out there that I'm sure can relate.
So you're now a mother, and did that inspire you to make some of the changes that you've made, or some of the directions that you've gone into?
So I'd actually go back a couple of years. It was during the pandemic where I think a lot of people went through big life changes. I stopped modeling. That was when, just at the start of the pandemic, a lot of the productions came to an end. I was also doing a lot of social media stuff, a lot of modeling. I was traveling so much. I was actually feeling like I was coming to a bit of burnout. And the pandemic hit. All the productions ended and I was at home. At that point, I realized, actually, do I love this enough anymore? 10 years in, it doesn't mean the same thing. The industry's not the same. I'm not the same. I feel like I'd done my best there and helped as many women as I possibly could. But I wanted to take a step back and I decided to leave everyone. I remember sending out those emails to all my agents saying, I need to stop, and being really scared. A massive part of my identity was forged in those formative years. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going into, but I just know I'm not happy here anymore. And I sat for that about 2 years in this place that I like to call the messy middle, where you don't really know who you want to become, but you're not quite who you used to be. And that's a hard place to be. And in that transition, I remember feeling so lost and really not confident and lacking purpose, if I'm really honest. I think when you don't have purpose, that's a really scary space, and not knowing what you're getting up for every day. It's a privileged space for sure, because on the other hand, because you don't have anything to get up for, you could get up for anything you want, right?
Yeah.
There's a reframing of it. But I'm somebody that likes routine. I like to have something I'm striving towards, goals, financial, mental, physical goals. And I didn't have any goals at this point. So I went on this big explorative journey where I did a 250-hour yoga teacher training course. I went and did other random courses in like neuroplasticity. I did a diploma in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Like I did all these
Okay.
random courses, upskilled, explored. That's when I went down the road of looking at investing. I was like, what about a fund? Well, what if I was to create my own fund? Like, why
Mhm.
not? I know a lot of women, young women that have great startups. Why don't I get involved?
Yeah.
Not that I even had loads of capital to invest, but I thought dream big. Why not? And it ended up leading me to want to go down the business route. Um, and then a few months into thinking about starting my own business, after doing quite a lot of research, I fell pregnant. And we went and did a scan, and they were like, "Oh yeah, there's your baby." And then they moved over, and they was like, "And there's your other baby." And I was pregnant with twins.
Insane, especially when you now were clear on what you wanted to be doing. And then you have this beautiful, amazing news. Was it planned?
We were trying,
Okay.
but not twins.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Did you feel nervous about, right, this is going to derail me for a point in time? Because I know for me that I was excited to have children, right? But also like, what does this mean for my business? What does this mean for my income? What does it mean for how people perceive me? And I remember really battling that I want people to still see me as the same person as I was before. Like, I'm just as smart, I'm just as successful, I'm just as good. It doesn't matter that I've got this big belly and I've got, problems and my hips hurt. I didn't want anybody to know that because I wanted them to treat me the same
Yeah.
as before. Is there something you felt like that?
Yeah, I can totally relate to this, having this feeling of I want to be still on my A game.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change. I'm going to look the way I look, feel with the same amount of energy that I had,
Yeah.
same amount of focus, drive, motivation. And then it all changed. And these babies come. And this is
Mm.
something that no one really tells you. When you become a mum, your whole world is flipped upside down.
Mhm.
It changes everything. And it's not because it's like someone shakes your house and it becomes a mess. It's just your attitude changes, your approach changes, you're exhausted. You're questioning, like, is this, with the time and energy that I do have, do I want to be doing this
Yeah.
anymore?
Yeah.
And if I do spend the little amount of time I have, does it matter? Does it fulfill me? Does it bring me to my financial goals that I have now? And more than anything, I realized the real impact of gender inequality.
Mhm.
The things like the default caregiver just becomes the mum. Um, Having to have the awkward conversations as, how are we realistically going to run this household? And because I'm not doing everything, how are we realistically going to raise our children? Because I want to still go back to work. How are we going to be contributing with the same amount of emotional energy and mental capacity to getting our house in order
Yeah.
and making sure everything's running? And that's when you have to really have the difficult conversations. Because before that, you're living your own life.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
doing your own thing. You're driving your car. You're going to your job. You're living what you think is an equal life. Like, you feel the impacts of gender inequality, the gender pay gap. You're getting wolf whistled and harassed out just because you're a woman. So you feel it. But I really felt it when I had babies.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you the primary caregiver or do you have good balance at home?
So it was really hard to figure out what we wanted to do, because at the same time, I carried these babies till 38 weeks and they've grown in me. Do I want to give them away straight away?
Right?
No. Am I struggling to look after both of them? For sure. It was one of those things that I had to really think about, because again, I've just come out of that transition in my career where I'm like, right, I'm ready to commit to the next decade of doing something that feels exciting for me, making change, hits all my financial goals. And I had to really think about, actually, how is this going to work with babies? Because I didn't realize it was going to take up so much time. I know that sounds really silly, but they just are babies are all encompassing.
Mhm.
And to think that you can have a career that sort of works alongside that, especially in the early days, is naive,
Yes.
because your body's adjusting, you're not sleeping, you're breastfeeding. Most women are breastfeeding. Whatever your decision was, it is so all encompassing. And it was like having to put the brakes on again when I was just ready to get started.
Mhm.
And I struggled because I would also see these other women that would I would admire and think, how did they do it? They've just had a baby and they're still looking so glamorous.
Yeah.
And who did their hair and makeup that day? Because I've just woke up and I can't even get myself out of bed and showered, not because I don't want to, because I feel like I have no time to.
Yeah.
And that's where I went down the route of researching and trying to find the answers. That's where my podcast CEO Mum came about, because I wanted to talk to women that are in air brackets doing it all and figuring it out. How are you doing it all? And I've just finished a whole season of recording, and I've realized the question isn't how do you do it all? It's do you do it all?
Exactly.
Because you're not doing it all. You have a team around you, and it's absolutely fine to share that. It takes a village to raise children, and it takes, we're not meant to live in a society that we are that's very individualist, very just, that cookie cutter family, mum, dad, like 2 caregivers, white picket fence house, isolated from the community. We're not meant to live like that.
No.
But I'm in this society, in this world, thinking that I have to do this all alone, and I still have to be on my A game in my career. Something's got to give. And so that's when I went down this exploration of how do women do that?
How do they do that?
How do they
Because
do that?
I was one of those who made it look like on the outside I had it all together, because I wanted to prove I've got this. I'm that girl. I can get back to it. But I know what things are like behind the scenes. And I realized I actually felt guilty for presenting to the world that I had it all together.
Yeah.
4 days after giving birth, I started reshooting videos. Had like a new baby. I was like, yeah, I gave birth 4 days ago. And I remember coming up and just showing them, yes, I've done it. Like, and I looked great, and I had my hair and had my makeup done. But really, I'm like, breathe. Like, let the bottom half like heal before you're sitting down doing videos, because I felt like I had to present to the world that image. And in hindsight, I'm like, why? Why do we do that?
Yeah. Why do we do that?
Have you had any insights from any of the people in your podcast?
We've had loads of insights. I think some of them is what we all know, but maybe we don't all know this, but obviously gender inequality, it's the patriarchy, it's these ideas that women should look a certain way all the time. And it's not really honoring so I'm going to go on a tangent to come back, but I was doing a hypnobirthing course just before I gave birth. And a lot of the hypnobirthing was about the science of labor and how you have to feel peaceful and not feel stressed when you're giving birth, because it helps with the pain of contractions. And another part of that was about this saying about spending 10 days in bed, 10 days around the bed, 10 days in the house. And that's how you heal, spending a month just in your home. And I was thinking, a month? Can I rest? No, thank you. Couldn't do that. First thing I wanted to do was, when the babies was here, was like get out and feel like I'm back in my body again.
Yeah.
But why? Why? And that course really made me question it. And a lot of the guests that come on also talk about this pressure. And it feels like it's been ingrained in us to not be vulnerable, to not heal, to not take that time out. Why? Because that looks bad. I don't know. I feel like there's so much mixed messaging out there of like, if you stop, you're weak. If you stop, you're not a good mum. Like, you should be raising your baby, you should be going to work, you should be paying your taxes, you should be looking beautiful, you should be cooking them 5 meals a day from scratch, like 3 meals a day from scratch. And it's not realistic, and no one does that. And I do remember after giving birth trying to honor that sense of I'm not leaving the bed for 10 days.
Oh, amazing.
But also feeling like I have emails to answer. If I don't answer them, my business stops, my income stops. I don't have if I stop working, I'm just going to be forgotten about. It's going to come to an end. There's going to be the next best thing that comes in. And these fears of, some people call it like the imposter syndrome, but I don't think it was that. I think in my head, this negative narrative was you're only as good as your last job. And that's great because it can push you forward. It's also bad because it gives you this innate sense of stress all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't afford to take time off. I don't have a maternity
That's
leave.
exactly what I would say, being self-employed. Like, I can't afford to not work. That's what I would always say, though I had savings. And the
Yeah.
bigger idea was, you're falling off. Like,
Yeah.
I'm falling out of the game in
You're dropping off the
comparison to
bandwagon.
others who weren't having children. Part of me had to recognize, okay, this is the season I'm in. Like,
Yeah.
if you've got kids, I can't do what I did before.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something else, maybe in 7 years,
Yeah.
maybe in 10 years, and that's fine.
I think we need to have an appreciation for seasons as well, because when I was in the very early stages, my babies are now 11 months old. They're going to be
Which are
one
still babies.
soon. I know, they are the little
Right?
joys of my life, and it is getting easier. But me and my and Tyson, we just keep saying seasons. We're in this season. It's going to pass, and it does. And now I have reference points. The first 3 months was excruciating. You're not sleeping. You're up every 3 hours with twins. Like it was too much at one point. But
You
it
didn't
was
get
a
a night
season.
nurse?
Yeah. So I actually had incredible support. We would be doing nights at some point, but I had a maternity nurse to help us. I had a nanny when they were 4 months. We still have a nanny. I had grandma. I've had my sisters.
Yeah.
Like I have a whole village around me, and it's a massive privilege to be able to afford that support. And it saved my mental health, my physical
100%.
health. It allowed me to heal after having a cesarean. But everything is a season, and I think there needs to be more appreciation for and just know that women are doing hard work, some of the actual hardest work, procreating, because this world would not continue to roll around if women didn't get pregnant.
Yeah.
So there has to be an appreciation for taking that moment, because you're not just taking time off. You're not sitting back and laying in bed all day. You're actually trying to keep yourself alive, keep babies alive, and heal. And that's, I think, the biggest job, the hardest job.
Emotionally, physically, mental labor and everything. It's the allowing yourself to do it. Now in hindsight, now that my kids are like 4 and 8, I wish that I would have given myself grace. Like, I put myself under a lot of pressure to just be back on it. And then I advise anyone, like, take your time.
Yeah.
Like, if you have to disappear for a year, disappear for a year.
Yeah.
Like, we can all work. Well, we hope we can all work later on. And if we don't, something will work out for us.
And it's only a year. I couldn't get my head around not feeling like I was going to be in it forever. And 1 year flies by.
Yeah.
And to be honest, some people don't even notice that you've gone or you've taken some time out.
Yeah.
Especially in our world, you know, it can feel like you need to constantly be putting out content. But 1 year, it was my biggest fear, taking that time out. I struggled to stop, especially when it's habit.
Yeah.
And especially where do you draw the line? What's content, what's not? But it is all seasons, and it's scary, but I would advocate to have more grace, like you said.
Do you feel like you're back into your next season just yet? And what does that look like for you?
I think I'm still sort of getting into the next season. The podcast has become a hobby turned new career path, surprisingly, weirdly, because talking to women and getting the advice that I sought out and looked for has led it to become a product. The podcast is now out in the world. It's a community. It's a place where I've been able to get the answers that I want, but it's also become something that I'm really excited by and love doing. I'm sure you get it, the buzz,
of course,
your podcast.
Yeah.
And it's having conversations and connecting again and sharing ideas and also changing ideas and these ideas that women should be doing it all alone, and hopefully contributing to that conversation and changing people's minds and sharing practical advice and real personal experience from women that have been and are going through juggling motherhood and their careers.
So let's talk about wealth and business, because I know that you are about that. What does that look like for you? How are you managing your wealth nowadays, especially as a new mum?
Oh, am I managing wealth? Oh, it's hard, because when you have kids, everything changes. The outgoings are, I'm a very privileged position to be able to afford to pay for support that frees up the time to go to work. In order to get financial wealth, you have to be going to work. When you become a mum, especially as a freelancer, finding the time to work is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And you have to be boundaried and you have to be structured with how you spend your time. So for me, how I am managing building wealth is by learning the art of multitasking, boundaries, and commitment to building my next business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the position that I'm in with being a new mum. That's a freelancer, that's managing my own business. I'm not going back to a job. I'm not on maternity leave. So my financial income is so not the norm right
Yeah.
now. And that's scary. That's a really scary place, because I'm eating away at the large treasure trove of savings that I've always had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's uncomfortable because I've never not had savings. I've never thought about myself having dependence. And as much as my partner is equally financially, we're very much equal in that space, and in our lives we're very equal. It's hard because women tend to take on more of the load, the emotional load, the care load. Women will take that on, but if you're trying to also contribute the way you once was, it's not realistic.
Yeah.
So I'm having to adjust to the fact that I am thinking at the back of my head that before I can leave the house and go to work, go to the coffee shop to focus on work.
Yeah.
I need to quickly go and put the baby's clothes in the wardrobe. I need to quickly take the food that they're going to have out of the
For
fridge.
dinner. Yeah.
They need to, I'm always scanning for what I need to do. And I have the most incredible fiance who is very much a feminist, who's very aware of, the load that I have to take on.
Yeah.
Because I talk about it a lot. I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Or, babe, where's the where did you put my? It's in the cupboard at the bottom. Why do women know where everything is?
Yeah.
I'm not carrying that mental load anymore. I'll tell
Yeah.
him, and he's like, I'm not even gonna ask you. I know. And so I feel like where I'm at, and this is a very long-winded answer to your question, where I'm at in my wealth journey is trying to acquire wealth whilst also juggling the demands of becoming a new mum.
And it's not easy to do that. And the expenses, again, increase. I spent a lot on like getting people to help me reduce mental load so I could focus more on business stuff. Because I think we feel like our brains are unlimited, but there is a limitation to I won't say limitation, but like we can't think about all things all the time. So when I got someone to help me like with housekeeping and things like that.
How did you feel delegating?
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely
amazing. Did you delegate the childcare as well?
I got an amazing childminder in who actually I feel like does better than me. She speaks French, she plays the piano, she loves playing games. I'm like, oh, she's doing a great job. She makes them look gorgeous. And I watch her do this and I'm like, excellent. Because I think the best thing is if your children have love around them and stability around them, that's how you really help them have the best version of themselves. That's all I care about.
And that doesn't make you less of a mother.
No.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm a better mum. Like, hi, darlings. Like, my house is clean. There's food already cooked. And I'm like sitting down and playing games with them only. Versus I'm the stressed out mum who's trying to do 10 different things and trying to make a living. And I'm screaming, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Because I saw that happen. I saw the stress on my aunts and my parents. And I'm like, why would I do that? If I don't have to do that, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be the cute mum who walks on in and smiles and kisses them on the cheek and says, come on, darling, let's go out and have a good time together. I want to be a good time mum.
Why do you think that you can do that? Like the common cause is that you've been able to afford to do that. Correct. Because you've worked really, really hard in your childless years and have taken that time to now set your life up so that you can continue to generate that wealth in order to support your children. I've had a question does that make you less maternal?
Oh, I like this question. It's a great question. So I actually often say that I'm not the stereotypical maternal woman. Sometimes I say I'm not that motherly. What does that even mean? I think that when people think of a motherly woman, she's always at home. She's always, cooking and baking and cleaning. And that's what makes her motherly. And I realize I'm not like that. Now, do I love my children to death? Yes, I do. Do I love anyone else's kids? Yeah. If they're in my care, yeah. If they're my kids, I'm like, bye. But do I love my children to death? Yes. So then I'm going to say that makes me maternal versus everything else that is a stereotype of what maternal looks like, because I don't meet that stereotype. It is what it is. Yeah. But I know my children are happy and happy with what I deliver for them. So That's my tick.
I think that's all that matters. And I think this
Mm,
stereotype where you should be a cook, someone's job, a
mm,
cleaner, someone's job,
mhm,
the house admin, which is a personal assistant,
mhm,
someone's
mhm,
job. If
mhm,
you should be, and the caregiver,
mm.
so you should be and look after yourself and look good. So 5 different occupations
Right,
in one
yeah,
person. I think that stereotype's completely just ridiculous and
yeah.
ludicrous. And actually delegating is the way forward if you can set your life up to do that in some way, which for me has always just been like work my ass off in order
Mhm,
to have that. And it's not for everyone and not everyone wants to do that,
mhm.
right? But it doesn't take away from you being maternal
Yeah,
because you want to show up and not feel drained and burn out.
yeah.
Because maternal burnout is a thing, and I didn't realize that until I felt it.
And in hindsight, as an adult, I recognize that I saw that in so many women around me, mothers, aunts. What they were doing was like miracle working, but also sending them off the edge. A lot of
Mm,
them were in very difficult situations with men
mm.
around who didn't even support them, and they were doing it all. And now I'm like, there is no way that I would put myself under that level of stress. There's no reason for it. What's interesting
100%.
on social now, there is a kind of move to trad wife. I don't know if you've seen
Oh
that kind of
god.
trend,
It gives
which,
me, like, goosebumps
yeah,
thinking that I never wanna
like
I feel it's problematic.
I
Do
feel
you
like
not?
I
Okay.
don't know if I feel like it's problematic. I kind of like it because there's certain things I love. Like I cook for fun. Like I don't cook for need. I cook because I feel like doing something extra on a Sunday. Don't cook every day. And I love that like women are able to embrace some kind of quote unquote feminine traits. But I think it's a little problematic in people think it's cute and fun because
Or it's what they expect from a woman when they get into a relationship with them,
yeah,
that you will just do all of these things
yeah.
like a traditional don't I have elements of traditional things in me as well that I
Hmm.
love, but it shouldn't be this kind of oppressive expectation that is just by default going to be your job. That's
Hmm.
the part that I hate and find
Hmm.
problematic. And I find it problematic because it's reinforcing something that's already quite strongly held in our
Hmm.
society. Whereas
Hmm.
it's not like a new idea of like, oh, what about like trad dads? Well, if like if men became a traditional housewife, it's not like a new idea of like
Hmm.
stay-at-home dads becoming a phase and a trend, which I'd be like advocating for. Sure, we should hear about that more just to allow men to think that they can be more than the breadwinner, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But when it becomes that, like, let's reinforce the stereotype to not get
In the
you
most
working
glamorous way
in
as
the most
well. I'm like,
glamorous way.
"Oh my gosh."
I know. And I grew up in a household where I did have two parents. My dad ran his own business, which was hard work to try and
Mm,
support it's me and three other siblings. So there's four of us. And my mum helped out. She was a stay-at-home, I guess, a housewife, but she would also help out my dad's business. But it was a struggle. It wasn't this like thriving, chain of restaurants. He had his own restaurant. Don't get me wrong, as a foreigner immigrating over and starting their own business, that's remarkable. Like he couldn't even speak the language when he first got
mm,
here. So start his own company, like hats off to him. But I do remember spending a lot of my summer holidays in the restaurant in the basement playing games,
mm,
when other people were going on summer holidays, and I saw the financial pressure that they were under and how my mum didn't have any financial independence or security because my dad was the breadwinner and she didn't have an
mm.
income. So she didn't even know how to manage bills. That was never going to be my life, and that was never going to be something that I would raise my children to not know. So financial literacy became a big part of my goal in that
Yeah,
respect, and setting my life up to have that support and not be stressed and not rely on a man financially solely was by far the biggest goal that I had.
yeah, yeah. I completely relate to that and get that. And I feel like I find this trend amongst, people who've come from maybe immigrant backgrounds as well. They've seen many sides of the coin and there's this level of wanting to protect yourselves for the long term. But I
Mm,
think the best thing is for us to approach it in a way that's beneficial for the next generation
mm.
and in the healthiest way possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to not feel like, I always think it's such a privilege, the position I'm in, and that's because of the hard work, luck, right timing that I've put myself in. And it's when I speak to women about like childcare and support and the fact that I'm not stressed like my mum was, I'm not in a single parent relationship like some of my friends and family members have been in, like that is such a privileged position, but it's something that I've learned from their experiences. So yeah, I mean, you've got to reflect on where you're at now, but appreciate where you've come from, I think, and just make sure that that's also, held in high regard. It's something I really want to instill in my children, particularly my daughter.
How do you think about wealth actually when it comes to your children?
Well, I'm already thinking about how I can monetize them. Joking.
Let's keep it real.
No, joking. I don't show my babies' faces on my socials, but I do a little bit of like incorporate them into my content because it's my life that I share online now. It's more my personal experience with motherhood and obviously career because I'm moving back into my career. And people do see the kids, but not their faces. My approach to them and wealth now is just trying to be realistic. I want to set them up with a bank account.
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting in savings from now.
Children's ISA. You can max it out.
Oh, tell me all about that.
I'll tell you all
Thank
about
you.
it.
Yeah, link below.
Yeah.
Children's ISAs. Any sort of birthdays. Just put money in their account. They don't need presents. Kids don't really need stuff when they're so young.
Yeah.
Like toys and stuff that will just get thrown in the bin or, used for 2 months and then disregarded. So yeah, I just think saving now and hopefully it will be a nice pot for when they go to uni or they want to buy their first car, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's what I really think about. I remember my partner's parents, they were able to like help his first house, the deposit, right? And weddings. And I was thinking, man, I wish I had that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now I think about everything I can put aside for them, like that they will never have to worry about things in future.
Well, you're a property investor as well.
Exactly.
Do you also think, because I definitely do, this is the property that I buy now, you've got one for you and one for you.
I do. I
to
feel
set
like
you
that.
up. Like that would have been, my parents didn't have anything to give me when I went to uni. And so the benefits of that was I worked hard. I got my first car, $2,500 Mercedes with some leather interior. I was proud of it. It was an old banger, but I was so proud when I was 18 years old that I saved up for that. My other friend got given a car. Easy. She didn't have to do all the other jobs that I had to do on the side. Sometimes leave lectures early so I could get to my job quickly. But it is character building. But those things, like I would love to give my child their first car.
Yeah.
Get them on the road, knowing that their driving places safe. It'll be an electric car, be sustainable, but it will nonetheless, and one with a tracker so I can see what they're doing, where they're driving. If they're going out, it will have the black box. Make sure they don't drive over the speed limit. But nonetheless, it's something that I really want to set them up. And that's my approach. Obviously, scrap it all. All that matters is love, right? But this is a podcast all about wealth. So why not allow them to have a really healthy, wealthy start in life?
If you can, yeah. Whereas my husband has a slightly different mentality. He's like, struggle is really good. He's like, the more they struggle, the stronger they'll be. But I think that might be a northern mindset or, I don't know, a man mindset. I think men and women do have different mindsets.
I feel like me and Tyson talk about this. We're like, we don't want to make them too soft where they become really sensitive to any kind of conflict or they don't have any resilience, but you don't want to make them too hard where they become cold. So it's really finding that in between in life. I think it's hard. You're quite a few years ahead of me, so I'd love to get your advice, but navigating it at this age, even as they're so teeny tiny and you're like, oh, one of them pushes the other one a lot and we're like, no, you can't. I'm like, no, you can't do that, boundaries. My partner's like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
You're already the strict dad.
Yeah. I feel like just let them be kids, see what happens. And again, if you can give them the love that they need and deserve, then they should be all right. They should be. And any advice you want to give to women listening today?
New mums that are entrepreneurial and business minded, I would say that give yourself grace. This is only a season. And especially if you were somebody that's really driven before and you feel like your whole world has changed, know that that element of you will come back in time. And just know that when you do have the time, when that season comes, to really protect that time for yourself, because you have to be mindful about putting a boundary around it so that you can continue to go and build what you want to build. Because at the end of the day, if you're not working, you're not putting in your pension pot. So yeah, you can do it and you'll be okay. And it's a season. And don't forget to ask for help. take all the help you can get.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you today?
You can find me on all social platforms at Jada Sezer, JADASEZER. Say hi. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.